All right, so you've given us quite a reading list this time on hermeneutics and the philosophy of language.
Yeah, diving deep into some philosophical waters today.
Gadamer in particular.
Oh, yeah.
We're tackling selections from Hans-Georg Gadamer's Philosophical Hermeneutics,
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the idea that language is universal,
Right.
but interpretation is always a challenge.
It's heady stuff.
Yeah, but really relevant these
Oh,
days.
for sure. More than ever, I'd say.
Our world is drowning in information.
Yeah.
So how do we even begin to understand it all?
Right. That's the question.
That's what we're here to help you with.
Exactly. We're going to try to pull out the most important ideas from Gadamer,
Okay.
and hopefully by the end of this deep dive, you'll understand why this matters to you,
Yeah, not just to philosophers.
not just for the academics.
Okay, so first up, the hermeneutic problem.
Ooh, yeah.
Sounds intimidating.
It does have that ring to it.
Why is language such a big deal in philosophy anyway?
Well, Gadamer starts there. Like, why is everyone so obsessed with language?
Yeah.
And his argument is that language is kind of the foundation of all understanding.
It's like we can't even think without language.
Yeah, exactly. You can't separate thought from language.
Right.
And he ties this to the explosion of knowledge that we've seen, especially in science.
Okay.
The more we learn, the more we realize our understanding is shaped by the language we use, the assumptions we make,
Yeah.
even just the time period we live in.
Right, if we were talking about this 100 years ago, we'd be using different words and concepts.
Entirely. Think about how we discuss scientific discoveries today.
Right.
Are we even talking about the same thing if our basic assumptions are different?
Yeah, that's a good point.
What about political debates?
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, those get heated so quickly.
For sure.
Even in everyday conversations, I think shared understanding through language is a lot trickier than it seems.
Right. Yeah, it's not a given.
No.
And speaking of things that are hard to interpret,
Okay.
Gadamer uses art as a perfect example.
Yeah, great example.
Right. We encounter meaning in art, but we don't totally control that meaning.
It's true. A work of art, it's meant to speak to us
Right.
across cultures and centuries even.
Mm.
But what it says is going to be colored by our own interpretations.
So, like, my interpretation of a painting might be totally different from yours, but we're both right.
Exactly. That's the beauty of it, I think.
Okay.
Imagine you're looking at, say, Van Gogh's Starry Night.
Okay.
What do you see when you look at that?
For me, I see like a kind of energy,
Okay.
a vibrancy, but also like a loneliness in those swirling brushstrokes.
Interesting.
Like beauty mixed with a little sadness, maybe.
And that's exactly the point.
Okay.
The meaning isn't just sitting there in the paint on the canvas.
Right.
It's shaped by what you, the viewer, bring to the experience, your
Yeah.
own background, your emotions.
That makes me think of historical consciousness.
Oh, yeah.
Which is another big idea Gadamer talks about. We're
Yes.
not just blank slates, are we?
No, absolutely not. Our understanding is colored by our past experiences or cultural background.
Mm-hmm.
Even the beliefs of our families and communities.
So knowing you have a lens like that makes you a more critical thinker, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It means you can't pretend to be totally objective.
Okay.
So if you're looking at historical documents, for instance,
Yeah.
knowing something about the author's life and times can really help you understand what they're really saying.
It's like reading between the lines.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's the subtext here?
Okay.
And that brings us to
Okay.
the concept of prejudice.
Ooh.
Now, before you get alarmed,
Okay.
Gadamer's not talking about negative stereotypes.
Right. Yeah, that would be pretty controversial.
Yeah, he's using the word in a slightly different way.
Okay.
He's actually saying that prejudices, in the sense of prejudgments,
Okay.
are kind of unavoidable
Mm-hmm.
and even necessary for understanding.
How interesting.
Think of it as the mental framework we bring to any situation based on our experiences.
So it's not always a bad thing.
Right? Imagine trying to read a book with zero prior knowledge of anything, language, history, culture.
It would be gibberish.
Totally. You wouldn't know where to begin.
Right. So we need those pre-existing ideas to even make sense of the world.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
The key, Gadamer says, is to be aware of our prejudices, to be
Right.
open to challenging them,
Okay.
and to realize that other people's prejudices might lead them to different
Mm-hmm.
but equally valid interpretations.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. It's
Yeah.
like hermeneutics isn't just for philosophy professors debating ancient texts.
Right.
It's for all of us.
It's for everyone.
trying to understand anything.
Exactly. Art history,
Yeah.
a news article,
Yeah.
even each other,
Even ourselves.
especially ourselves. And that's something Gadamer really dives into.
Right. How tricky self-understanding can be.
Oh, it's so hard.
We like to think we're totally in control of our thoughts and actions, but
But are we really? Gadamer pushes back on that. He argues that we're shaped by language, by history, by relationships in
Hmm.
ways that we don't always realize.
Right. It's not just our individual minds floating
Oh,
around.
no, not at all.
It's more like we're part of a giant web of meaning.
Exactly, woven together by all these influences.
Yeah, and that makes it even more important to be aware of those influences,
Right? For sure, if we want to untangle them.
so we can understand ourselves better.
That's the goal.
Okay, so far we've seen how language shapes our understanding of the world, of history, even of ourselves.
Yeah.
But where does language itself come from?
Ooh, now we're getting to the heart of it.
Okay.
Gadamer argues that language isn't just a tool we use to communicate.
Okay.
It's the very medium through which we experience and understand reality.
I'm blown.
Right.
Yeah.
We literally cannot think outside of language.
Wow.
It's a pretty radical idea when you think about it.
Yeah.
He compares it to playing a game.
Okay.
You can't play chess without understanding the rules.
Right.
Right. In the same way you can't understand the world without understanding language.
So language is like the rule book for life.
In a way, yeah, it gives us that framework
Okay.
for making sense of everything.
But just like the rules of a game, language can change and evolve over time, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what's so fascinating about it.
Okay.
New words are added to the dictionary all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Old words take on new meanings.
Right, so it's a living thing.
Exactly. Language is alive and breathing.
Yeah.
It's constantly adapting to new contexts and experiences.
Okay.
And as language changes, so does our understanding of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's a dynamic process,
Very cool.
always in flux.
So it's not just that we use language to express our thoughts. It's that language is actually shaping the thoughts themselves.
Yeah, that's really the core of what Gadamer's getting at.
Okay.
We can't separate our thinking from the language we use to think.
Yeah.
It's like trying to breathe without air.
It's so ingrained in our experience that we don't even realize how much language is influencing us.
Right. It's like the water the fish swim in. They don't even notice it's there.
Exactly.
Mm.
But once we do start paying attention to language, to its power and its limitations,
Yeah.
we start seeing the world differently.
Oh, for sure.
We begin to question all those assumptions we've been carrying around without even realizing it.
It's like those assumptions become visible for the first time.
Right.
And that questioning is crucial for understanding.
Okay.
And not just understanding the world, but understanding each other.
Okay.
Gadamer really emphasizes this point, that language is inherently social.
Okay.
It's not something we invent in isolation.
It's like we're all born into this ongoing conversation.
Exactly. That's been happening for centuries.
That's a cool way to think about it.
And that conversation shapes how we think, how we see the world, even how we interact with each other. Gadamer uses the analogy of a game to illustrate this.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that work?
So imagine learning to play chess. You don't just make up the rules as you go along. You learn them from someone who already knows how to play.
Right.
And those rules, they dictate how you think about the game, how you strategize, how you engage with your opponent.
So language is like the rule book for the game of life.
In a sense,
Yeah.
yes, it provides us with this framework,
Yeah.
for understanding the world, for communicating with others, for making sense of our experiences.
Okay.
But just like the rules of chess, the rules of language aren't set in stone.
Right. They change over time.
Exactly. New words pop up.
Mm.
Old words get new meanings.
Yeah, like literally all the time.
All the time. Language is this living, breathing thing, constantly adapting to new contexts and experiences.
And as language changes, so does our understanding of the world.
Right. It's all interconnected.
That makes me think about misunderstandings.
Oh, yeah.
How sometimes people just talk past each other.
Ah, yes. Gadamer reminds us that communication isn't just about transmitting information.
Right.
It's about interpretation.
Yeah.
It's about what the speaker intends, how the listener hears it, all the baggage we bring to the conversation.
All that unspoken stuff.
Exactly. Our prejudices, in that Gadamerian sense,
Mhm.
our personal histories, our cultural backgrounds,
Yeah.
all of that colors our understanding of what's being said.
This happens to me all the time.
I'm sure.
Especially in text messages.
Oh, yeah.
You can't hear the person's tone of voice.
Right.
So it's so easy to misinterpret things.
And that's where things get messy.
Yeah.
Misunderstandings are almost inevitable
Yeah.
because we're all coming to the table with these different sets of assumptions.
It's like we're speaking the same language, but with slightly different accents.
That's a great way to put it. Gadamer would say, even when we agree on the definitions of words,
Yeah.
the connotations, the emotional weight we attach to them
Mm-hmm.
can vary widely.
Right.
And that's where empathy comes in. trying to see things from the other person's point of view.
Right, like really trying to understand where they're coming from.
And realizing that even if we disagree, there's
Yeah.
still value in the conversation itself.
Okay, so it's not about winning the argument.
No.
It's about the process of trying to understand each other, even if we never fully arrive at the same conclusion.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that communication is this ongoing process.
Yeah.
A dialogue, not a one-way street.
So to bring this back to Gadamer,
Okay.
how does he suggest we navigate these complexities of language and interpretation?
Well, he emphasizes the importance of self-awareness,
Okay.
recognizing our own prejudices,
Right.
our own OBON biases, and understanding how they shape our understanding of the world.
Knowing yourself is the first step.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And then being open to other perspectives, even those that challenge our own deeply held beliefs.
Okay.
This requires a willingness to listen, truly listen
Right.
to what others are saying, even if we don't agree with them.
Not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Exactly. Active listening.
And being willing to admit when we're wrong.
That's a big one.
Or at least when we haven't fully considered another point of view.
That's a tough one,
Yeah.
but so important.
Yeah. Humility is key.
Humility plays a crucial role in this whole hermeneutic process, for sure.
So Gadamer is basically saying that good communication is about more than just being right.
I think so. It's about being open, curious,
Yeah.
and willing to engage in genuine dialogue with others, even when it's difficult.
Right. It's not always easy.
No, but it's worth it.
This all sounds very abstract, though.
Okay.
How does this actually play out in real life?
Yeah, good question.
Can you give us an example?
Sure. Imagine you're reading a historical text,
Okay.
say a first-hand account of a major event, like a revolution.
Okay. I'm picturing a diary.
Okay.
Handwritten in faded ink.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a citizen's perspective on this, tumultuous time.
Perfect. Now, as you're reading this diary,
Yeah.
you're not just passively absorbing information.
Okay.
You're actively interpreting it,
Right.
bringing your own knowledge and experiences to bear on the text.
So if I'm someone who's always lived in a peaceful democracy,
My understanding of a revolution is going to be very different from someone who's lived through war and upheaval.
exactly, your prejudices,
Yeah.
in that Gadamerian sense,
Look here.
they will shape how you read and understand that text.
Right.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
The person who wrote that diary also had their own prejudices,
Okay.
their own biases and assumptions that colored how they experienced and recorded those events.
So like a double layer of interpretation.
Right.
We're trying to understand someone who is already interpreting events through their own lens.
Exactly. And to complicate matters further,
Okay.
there's the historical and cultural context
Right.
in which that diary was written,
Okay.
the language they used,
Mm-hmm.
the values and beliefs of that time. All these factors contribute to the meaning of the text.
It's like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces.
That's a great analogy. We can never fully reconstruct the past,
You're right.
but we can try to piece together an understanding based on the fragments we have.
And that's the beauty of hermeneutics.
Okay.
It's this ongoing process of discovery,
Yeah.
of dialogue and of interpretation. There's no end point, no final answer.
Okay, so it's more about the journey than the destination.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about art,
Mhm.
history, even ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
but what about something a little more everyday?
Okay.
How does hermeneutics apply to, our daily conversations and interactions?
That's a great question. Think about the last time you had a miscommunication with someone.
Oh, that happens all the time.
I'm sure.
Maybe you said something that was interpreted in a way you didn't intend.
Oh, yeah, it happens to the best of us.
Like just the other day, I was telling a friend about a movie I saw,
Okay.
and they took it as a criticism of their taste in films, even though I didn't mean it that way at all.
Oh, no, classic miscommunication.
And it turned into a whole thing.
Wow.
And it all stemmed from this simple miscommunication.
Hermeneutics helps us understand how those misunderstandings arise. It reminds us that we're all coming to conversations with our own baggage,
Yeah.
our own experiences and expectations that shape how we hear and interpret what others are saying.
So it's not just about what we say, but how we say it.
Yeah, tone of voice,
Yeah.
body language,
And how the other person hears it.
all of it,
Yeah.
cultural context. All these things play a role in how meaning is created in a conversation.
Okay.
And hermeneutics gives us tools for being more mindful of these subtle but crucial aspects of communication.
So it's about being more self-aware in our own communication,
Yeah.
but also more sensitive to the perspectives
Yeah.
and potential interpretations of others.
Precisely, it's about recognizing that communication is a two-way street
Okay.
and that true understanding requires effort, empathy,
Hmm.
and a willingness to listen deeply.
And to be okay with not always getting it right.
Oh, that's huge.
Because even with the best of intentions, misunderstandings are bound to happen.
Oh, they happen all the time. But hermeneutics reminds us that even those misunderstandings can be valuable opportunities for learning and growth.
Oh, interesting.
They force us to examine our assumptions,
Right.
to clarify our intentions, and to strive for greater clarity and understanding in our communication.
It's like those moments of friction are actually the sparks that ignite deeper connection.
That's beautifully put. It's through those moments of challenge and discomfort that we're pushed to grow, to expand our understanding, and to move closer to genuine dialogue and connection.
Like trying to put a dream into words.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can get close, but something's always lost in the translation.
Yeah, some of the feeling the essence.
Language is a powerful tool, but it's not a perfect one. And hermeneutics, I think, helps us appreciate both the power and the limitations of language,
Okay.
and encourages us to use it thoughtfully and responsibly.
So practically speaking,
Okay.
how can we use this knowledge about language to actually improve our communication and understanding?
One key takeaway, I think, is to be really mindful of the language we use, especially when we're dealing with sensitive topics.
Yeah, like if you're having a discussion about politics or social issues,
Exactly.
you need to be extra careful with your word choice.
Oh, absolutely. Those words carry so much weight,
Yeah.
and they can easily be misinterpreted
Right.
or used to cause harm. Gadamer reminds us that language is never neutral.
Okay.
It always reflects a particular perspective, a set of values and beliefs.
So it's not just about being grammatically correct.
No,
It's about understanding the power dynamics behind the words we use.
exactly. Who's speaking? Who's being spoken to? What are the underlying assumptions?
Right, like even the simple act of choosing one word over another
It makes a difference.
can have a huge impact on how the message is received.
For sure. And it's about using our words in a way that promotes understanding and respect,
Okay.
rather than division and conflict.
Yeah, building bridges, not walls.
It's also about being open to different ways of using language, you know?
Like different dialects or accents, even slang.
Exactly. Gadamer reminds us that there's no one correct way to use language.
Okay.
Different communities and cultures have developed their own unique ways of speaking and writing,
Right.
and I think those differences should be celebrated, not dismissed.
It's like language is alive. It's constantly evolving and adapting.
Exactly. And hermeneutics encourages us to embrace that diversity of language, to see it as a source of creativity and richness rather than a barrier to communication.
So it's about being curious about different ways of speaking.
Yeah,
Being willing to learn from people who communicate differently than we do.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And realizing that our own way of speaking is just one among many.
We've covered a lot of ground today. Prejudice,
Yeah,
historical consciousness, the power of language, the importance of self-awareness.
it's a lot to unpack.
Where does all this leave us? What's the big takeaway from Gadamer and hermeneutics?
I think the most important takeaway from Gadamer is that understanding is a journey, not a destination.
Okay.
It's about being open to new perspectives, challenging our assumptions, and constantly striving to deepen our understanding of ourselves, each other, and the world around us.
It's not about finding the right answer.
No.
It's more about the process of seeking understanding.
Exactly. And I think it's a journey worth taking
Okay.
because it leads to greater empathy, connection, and meaning in our lives.
This deep dive has been incredibly thought-provoking.
I enjoy it.
Gadamer's ideas are complex, but they really make you re-examine how you approach everything.
I agree. They're so relevant to how we live our lives, how we interact with the world.
His work is more relevant than ever in today's world,
I think so.
where we're bombarded with information from all sides.
Oh, yeah.
It's like we need hermeneutics now more than ever.
Just to navigate daily life.
Exactly. So much to think about.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little more equipped to handle it all now.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
like having a new set of lenses to see the world through.
And a new appreciation for the power of language.
Yeah, words really do matter.
They really do.
So for our listeners out there, keep those conversations going. Keep questioning. Keep exploring.
That's the spirit.
And remember, understanding is an ongoing process, a journey without a final destination.
Wise words.
Well, that about wraps it up for this deep dive into Gadamer's philosophical hermeneutics.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
Until next time, happy exploring.